about what local reporting means to you as a reporter on WBFO.
Well, I think anytime a journalist starts their career, at least for me, it's all about helping your community. So it all makes sense, right, that in this local news sort of hemisphere that we are focusing on those local community-driven stories and, bringing reporters in and support staff and things like that are from all around the area to really get a great in-depth picture at what Western New York, what's happening and what could happen, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I pick up on it all the time when I hear your stories. And later on in this morning, we're going to be hearing some of the best stories of Ryan Zunner from 2024, and we'll talk a little bit about those. One of the things that reporters do not do very often is they don't do very often is talk about themselves. Sorry, I'm getting hand signals from people.
No, that's okay.
So tell us a little bit about that. What is it like for you?
So I mean, it's interesting. Usually as a reporter, you're not the one being asked the questions.
Yeah, that's right.
So it is nice because these stories that we do, we put so much effort into, right? And they get broadcasted a few times because that's just how it happens, right? It goes on a website, but after a while, people stop looking at it. So it's nice to have that sort of retrospective look on these stories, see the impact they had and a lot of the behind-the-scenes work that went into them.
Thanks. I've been speaking with Ryan Zunner, a voice you're familiar with on WBFO, of course, one of our great reporters, and we are live this morning from Unapologetic Coffee on Main Street, 899 Main Street in Buffalo. Please stop by. We are going to be speaking with the owner in just a minute, so we're actually going to play a little musical chairs here. Ryan is going to get up, and our owner of the business here is going to sit down. And so her name is Alicia Officer, and I'm looking forward to speaking to her again. Thank you, Ryan. Playing a little bit of musical chairs here. Hi, how are you? Nice to see you. We are here at Unapologetic Coffee with owner Alicia Officer. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you.
We had the chance to talk a couple of days ago, so we got to know each other a little bit. So it's great to be here this morning. Tell us about your business and where we are. We are at 899 Main Street in Buffalo, by the way, right across from Lovejoy Pizza, if you know where that is.
Yep.
Just south of Allen Street. And again, we'd love to have you pop in, have a cup of coffee, and see us on the air live, right?
Yeah, that'd be great. We're right between Carlton and Virginia. So Unapologetic Coffee really started from, I like to say, a problem and a passion. My sister and I have always loved the art of coffee, the communication aspect behind it. We've been drinking coffee since we were toddlers, unfortunately to say, with our grandmother. So we have this connection through our family that coffee was always the start of the day and the end of the day.
Yeah.
You started over a pot of coffee and would sit at her house and by the fireplace when we were kids. Fast forward many eons later, and that passion of coffee really never left. But with my sister being a school teacher here locally in Buffalo, New York, actually within the same block district, we discovered during COVID a lot of her students were struggling with the ability to have proper things like internet. So my sister asked, we should do something about it, and it started off with the idea of let's open the cafe. We said we would open when we retire. When we started looking down the line, how are we going to do this? We actually switched to commercial roasting. So we had roasted for a hobby, and before that, really had never ventured out into commercial roasting. But we decided to switch from a cafe to a roaster in the initial onset of the company. And that's how it got started, just literally 2 small items happening.
So that's really just great. We are here at Unapologetic Coffee at 899 Main Street in Buffalo, getting to know owner Alicia Officer and talking a lot about coffee. And there's nothing like talking about coffee on a cold morning in Buffalo. We hope to hear from you with a membership pledge this morning at 877-456-8870, and we'll be back shortly. Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
We don't have audio for the stories. This is about the time you need it. So we're going to have to just sort of talk about the story for a while until we can figure out if we can get audio.
Okay.
All right? So,
About the story. There is the story. Okay. So I have my notes on your story.
Yes, I believe the first one's
Oh yeah,
Haudenosaunee,
doing homework always helps.
Thanksgiving.
stand by, guys.
Yep. Let's do it. And we're back at Unapologetic Coffee. My name is Marty Wimmer. We're at 899 Main Street in Buffalo, and we are enjoying some great coffee this morning.
Yes.
And I'm speaking with reporter Ryan Zunner, and I am very, very thrilled about what's going on.
Yes, me too. Yes, it's a great morning.
So tell us a little bit about what you do now. In your, again, you're a reporter. It is. You had 4 stories that you chose to talk to us about today that were your favorites from 2024.
Right.
And one of them that I'd like to talk to you about this morning is called The Haudenosaunee and the Power of Thanksgiving. Now, here at WBFO and at Buffalo Toronto Public Media, we talk about thanks a lot because we are very thankful to our listeners, our viewers on television who become members and make donations so that we can keep this public station going. And your story has to do with thanks in a related way. The story was called, again, The Haudenosaunee and the Power of Thanksgiving from November of 2024.
Yeah.
Great story. Tell me a little bit about it.
Yeah, so I mean, it really all started, like a lot of great stories do here in public media, of just conversations with some of your colleagues. And, Thanksgiving, the holiday, was coming up in November.
Yeah.
And, as the Indigenous desk reporter, a lot of the questions was like, do a story on, Native Americans and, views on Thanksgiving. And that story's been done a lot.
When you take that step back and you think about things that have not happened to you.
Yep.
You think about gratitude, you think about thanks, you think about the fact that your health is reasonably good, and
Yeah.
and it really, it's humbling. The idea of thanks is actually humbling.
Yes.
And it makes you realize that things are good if you really take a look at them and you give thanks for that. I find that humbling aspect of thankfulness interesting.
It's a powerful thing, and that's a lot what Michael Martin, the person I interviewed for this story, that's a lot of what he said, and I think the story has a lot of crossover, whether you're Haudenosaunee or from another Native American tribe or non-Native too. I
Yeah.
think everyone can find a common ground in a story like that, and that's why I personally. Thought it was a great story for the holiday of Thanksgiving for our listeners to listen to.
Yeah, and even at WBFO, when we do these membership campaigns and we ask folks to make pledges to the station, there is a real feeling of thankfulness and within the company, within the people who work here, who really are thankful for those contributions that keep this public radio station alive. So if you are a person who is a member of WBFO, thank you so much for your pledge. If you haven't become a member, we'd love to have you join right now at 1-877-456-8870. If you're hearing some sound effects in the background, by the way, they're actually not sound effects.
Yeah.
We're actually
all natural.
It's all natural. We're in a coffee shop right now. We are at Unapologetic Coffee at 899 Main Street in Buffalo. And I suppose we're hearing the latte. Is that what it is? The
espresso machine, maybe? Yes,
something.
Yeah.
So
lots of good caffeine.
So we're enjoying the smell and the aroma of great freshly ground coffee this morning. And of course, this is a fun thing to be doing, a radio remote in a local business like this.
Yeah.
You're very connected to the local community as a reporter. Being here today is really a special. We don't do this all the time,
right? But
we thought we'd take this trip down here today. Talk about local reporting and your passion for that, because I sense there is one.
Yeah. No, I mean there certainly is. I'm a big believer that everyone has a story, and it's just finding it, right. And as reporters, especially local reporters, our job is to sort of hold that mirror up to the community. To whatever is happening around, and I feel like we have a great team in place to be able to accomplish those things.
Yeah.
And
you work with a great team too. It's not just you. There are quite a number of reporters, and you all do. We all do different stories, different beats, different things like that.
Yeah.
But I have just gotten some great news. We didn't think we were going to be able to do this, but we are going to be able to share your story.
Yes.
This story is called The Haudenosaunee and the Power of Thanksgiving. It was one of Ryan's favorite stories from 2024. It aired on November 28th, and we're going to be hearing about Thanksgiving and that sort of thing. So let's take a listen to the story, and we'll talk to you on the other side. Here it goes.
This is WBFO News, your NPR station on this Thanksgiving. I'm Ryan Zunner. Today is a day in which American families come together for food, football, and fun. While many countries celebrate a Thanksgiving, in the United States it's still very rooted in the colonial period and the first Thanksgiving, which historically wasn't a great period for Native American people. But the act of giving thanks, making a lifestyle of it, is deeply rooted in Haudenosaunee culture and tradition.
We're taught to do a ganonyo or a ganahanyo, the Thanksgiving address, or the words that become before all else when we gather, and we're taught to do it when we wake up in the morning and before we put our head to our pillow. And it really helps us to reset and re-ground ourselves in that perspective of gratitude and abundance, which is the core of our, what we call ganakuyo or ganagohio, the good mind.
That's Michael Martin, an Onondaga of the Beaver Clan and executive director of Native American Community Services. He says the practice of giving thanks lays the foundation for Haudenosaunee people. It grounds you in the past, present, and future.
We acknowledge the people, we acknowledge all the gifts of the natural world, and we feel we have a benevolent creator, one who's intended us to be healthy and well, and has gifted us these gifts of the natural world. Water, food, our medicines, plants we use for our medicines, the animals, the trees, that take our CO2, turn it back into oxygen so we can breathe, and the sun and the moon and all the stars and the winds and the grandfathers of the thunders. All those things in that Thanksgiving address are just to remind us of how much we are in abundance, how thankful we should be for that, and it helps to reset our good minds. And I tell often audiences that I'm sharing the Thanksgiving with, like, if you really, just put your head to your pillow tonight and just think about just this one day of giving thanks, right? All the things you have to be thankful for. You woke up this morning, you opened your eyes, you took that breath, you were given another day of life on this earth. And we all know, unfortunately, that's a fragile gift, but we've been given that, so we give thanks. Amazing things can happen in one day. It's up to us what we do with it.
The ganonyo, or Thanksgiving address, is something that's said in many gatherings of Haudenosaunee people. There is no one correct ganonyo, but when it's spoken in the traditional language, is oftentimes an oral.
It's one of those what we call the original instructions. When we were in our teachings, we all came as humans from the same creation, and we all would have gotten those same original instructions. And when I talk about teachings of the good mind, I always say that they're universal, because I think all people have gotten those. You look across cultures and religions, you'll see those same elements within the core of those. And I think if we focus more on our common humanity, we will see more of that.
Martin says that expression of gratitude is super impactful for Native people who've experienced trauma across multiple generations, from the colonial period, land loss and removal, to the long era of residential boarding schools and more. He says it's almost therapeutic.
There's a lot of practicality to it, too, because like during the pandemic and other times of worrying, especially these times we live in today, and we know we have a lot of young people dealing with anxiety and fears, and we know anxiety is sort of this fear about the future and what could happen. We know depression is like a fear about the past reoccurring, and things that are holding us back in the past. And so we do practices of grounding ourselves, taking a breath of life, just a deep breath, taking in all of creation into that breath into you to help refocus ourselves in the present, and then find something to be thankful for. And that helps to rewire the brain into reducing some of that anxiety, that fear that people might be facing.
While the Haudenosaunee have certainly made giving thanks an integral part of principles like the 7 generation and gathering of the good minds, Martin says all people can make it part of their routine and traditions to improve their well-being and the well-being of their communities.
It's not copyrighted in any way. I mean, and I encourage people to practice living in gratitude. And there's a lot of science that's catching up to the power of gratitude. Not only, like I said, dealing with anxiety and depression, it helps you sleep better, because a lot of people go to bed worried. If you can ground yourself with that Thanksgiving and really see, okay, things aren't as bad, I'll get over this challenge too. But I have all the things I need to live a healthy and good life. And if I focus on those, I'll be fine, And it creates an interconnection between people and all living things. So it's a powerful act, and I encourage people to put that in practice in both small and large ways.
Some food for thought, the Haudenosaunee way. For your NPR station, Ryan Zunner, WBFO News.
Good work, Ryan. That is a really fascinating story, all about giving thanks and gratitude. Good work on that. One of your favorites from 2024.
Certainly,
right?
certainly one of those just great personal ones, and again, one that has a message that I think rings true all year round.
Yeah. You know, another message that rings true, I believe, is the fact that here at WBFO, we are a public radio station, and it's our great listeners who make all these great stories possible. So if you're already a member, thank you so much. If you are not, please become one right now at 1-877-456-8870. By the way, we're on YouTube right now on the WBFO YouTube channel, so if you want to check us out there visually, you could do that at WBFO.
Not just hearing, but seeing.
That's right, hearing and seeing. We're going to get all the senses involved. Maybe not smell. No, there's great smells in this coffee
If you
shop
come
as
to
well.
Unapologetic
That's
Coffee
right.
on Main Street, you can certainly get some good smells.
Yeah, so we're at Unapologetic Coffee at 899 Main Street in Buffalo. Stop by. We are doing a live remote right now, and we are thrilled that you're watching on YouTube, listening on the radio, and we just hope that maybe we can see you here. Stop on by. But do become a member this morning at 1-877-456-8870. Ryan, we're a public radio station.
Yes, we are. Wouldn't be possible without people like you.
And that's what makes it all possible. It's our listeners becoming members, making donations whatever amount they can at WBFO.org or by calling 1-877-456-8870. Again, check us out at YouTube at WBFO on YouTube. And we're having a great time this morning. We're going to be listening to another one of your stories coming up
Yes.
in just a little while. So, again, we hope to hear from you with that membership pledge at 1-877-456-8870, coming to you remote from Unapologetic Coffee at 899 Main Street in Buffalo, because we are local. We are here in the community at a local business right now. Come support it, 1-877-456-8870. Cue sheet here. Unapologetic Coffee at 899 Main Street in Buffalo. My name is Marty Wimmer here with WBFO reporter Ryan Zunner, and we are highlighting some of the stories Ryan did in 2024. He picked 4 of his favorite stories. We're talking about them today as we also ask you to become a member of WBFO at 1-877-456-8870. Your focus on local stories is really important to you, and one we're going to take a look at now is called Legacy of Native Residential and Boarding Schools Still Felt Today. I listened to the story already, and it's impactful.
Yes. Residential and boarding schools is something that affected Native communities all across the United States, all across Canada.
Yeah.
So it's one of those unfortunate traumas that Native people have had to endure that is felt all around really the continent in terms of that.
Yeah, and when I listened to the story, I had the chance to preview it. I was struck by the fact that it was still going on in the 1990s in
Yes,
some places.
in Canada. Yep.
So it's not something from long ago. We're going to take a good listen to that story now, and we do hope to hear from you at 1-877-456-8870. Here's the story. We'll talk about it on the other side.
Language and culture suppressed and experienced high levels of abuse and disease.
The boarding schools were the ultimate in ethnic cleansing. And many of my colleagues have told me, Dean, why don't you just call these schools what they are, because a school has a playground outside, right? These boarding schools had graveyards.
That's Dean Seneca, a Seneca Nation member and longtime public health professional, formerly with the Center for Disease Control, UB instructor, and founder of Seneca Scientific Solutions. He links a bulk of health disparities facing Native people today to years of trauma from assimilation tactics.
This is a direct result of the health conditions that we have today, right? Diabetes, cardiovascular disease, unintentional injuries, substance use disorders, domestic violence, sexual violence. All of these things are plaguing our people because of this convoluted history and what has been done structurally to Native people.
A history the Canadian government has formally admitted and apologized for. It operated or funded over 100 schools, including the Mohawk Residential School in Brantford, Ontario, nicknamed the Mushhole by students for its poor quality food. Canada funded these schools until 1997. It operated the Thomas Indian School in Cattaraugus till the 1950s and has never taken responsibility. The U.S. government has also yet to make a direct apology for its hundreds of boarding schools, even after Secretary of the Interior Deb Haaland, the first Native American woman in a cabinet position, oversaw a 3-year investigation.
You know what? Native people cannot move forward and heal until there is some sort of reconciliation, until there's some sort of acknowledgement. The other thing, though, that I think is more important is that we know there's unmarked graves in our communities around these boarding schools. We've all heard stories about kids that would come there and the next thing you know, they're not there anymore. I think we really want to know how many of these unmarked graves are there.
A Canadian government commission estimated residential school deaths at over 6,000, and official numbers continue to rise with more research. Holland's investigation reported nearly 1,000 deaths, but believes the numbers could be higher. On this Orange Shirt Day, Ryan Zunner, WBFO News.
Heartbreaking story. Heartbreaking story. Wow. What was that like as a reporter to report on something like that's kind of a horror story, really?
You know, it's tough, right? Because, you know, on one hand, you're bringing attention to a major issue that unfortunately doesn't get enough attention or hasn't over the years. You know, on another hand, you know, personally, my grandfather was in a residential school up in Canada, so there really isn't a Native person around that, you know, doesn't have a direct connection to those unfortunate times that lasted, you know, well over 150 years.
Wow.
And, you know, Dean Seneca was a great voice on that, one of the great Native public health professionals to really talk about how, you know, that legacy isn't just shown in, you know, death toll numbers or things like that, but it's shown in things like high rates of heart disease, diabetes, alcoholism, things like that, you know, still face Native communities today.
Very fascinating story, and we have a couple more coming up later this morning. So we're here with Ryan Zunner. He's a reporter on WBFO. You've probably heard his voice many times before. My name is Marty Wimmer. I work at Buffalo Toronto Public Media down the hall at the Classical Station, and I join my friends at BFO every now and then, and we have a great time. And these stories are really, really fascinating. Today, we're having a lot of fun. I mean, the stories can be serious, but we're having some fun this morning as well. We are at 899 Main Street in Buffalo at a local business called Unapologetic Coffee. And you can hear the noises in the background right now. I guess somebody is having an espresso, right?
I think so, Marty.
So, you know, it's the sights and sounds and aromas of a great new business coffee shop right here on Main Street. If you know where Lovejoy Pizza is or where the corner of Allen and Main are, we're just across the street from there between Carlton and Virginia. Come on in and join us, have some coffee, see some live radio, some live YouTube, and if you can possibly do it, become a member of WBFO at 1-877-456-8870. This is the second day of a membership drive when we ask our great listeners and now our great YouTube viewers to become members. That phone number is 1-877-456-8870. You can also pledge at WBFO.org. Ryan, it's so interesting to speak with a reporter about the work that you do. Reporters tell the stories of our community. It's great to hear the story behind the story from the reporter. So these stories mean something to you personally.
Yeah, you know, all those, you know, the indigenous stories I do, you know, oftentimes, yeah, it is finding those people in the community that you know of and have been around for years and doing great work. And, you know, you don't unfortunately hear them on a lot of the news stations.
Yeah.
A lot of the stories I do are only here.
That's right, only here, and we're going to be going to more in just a moment here at WBFO. Another great story coming up. We're going to be hearing one in just a few minutes called UB's Indigenous Studies Department Highlighting Academic Research. That's a pretty interesting title. Yeah. And the story is talks about things like the thrifty gene theory,
Yep.
which is something new to me. And we just hope that the story is going to be one that you enjoy. So we're going to that story right now. I'm going to ask my producer, Joe, we going to that story? They'll go. Okay, all right, there we go. Okay, we are right now. We're going to be hearing that story in just a
Very
minute.
soon. Don't worry.
Yeah, we'll get to that story in a minute. This is the fun of live radio.
Yeah.
Like, you know, it's real. It's the real deal. So we are in our pledge break here at WNED, and what that means to you as a listener, as someone on YouTube, is that we're going to ask you now to become a member at 1-877-456-8870 or at WBFO.org. The dollars that we raise this morning are the dollars that make Ryan's job possible, make you able to go out there and get these stories and report them back, these local stories. We're at a local business this morning, Unapologetic Coffee on Main Street in Buffalo, 899 Main Street. Talk about how the dollars, Ryan, make a difference for you doing your job.
Well, you know, it supports reporting that, you know, like we talked a little bit about before, in areas that, you know, don't get covered all the time by commercial and corporate media. You know, things like the Indigenous Affairs Desk, things like the Disability Desk, our focus on environmental reporting, and some of these other areas that, you know, just get kind of, you know, lost in the fray a little bit.
You know, I don't think we can emphasize that enough, that a lot of important stories don't get covered by other outlets because there's not a whole lot of money involved, maybe. There's not a whole lot of influence. But here at Buffalo Toronto Public Media at WBFO, we dig into those stories. Important stories that have a local connection, and we're able to do that because people like you call 1-877-456-8870 or make pledges at WBFO.org. It's a real impact.
It does. We really could not do what we do.
Yeah.
You know, without those dollars, without that support. You know, your dollars are felt every day in our newsroom and the work we do.
It is very, very important. I'm so glad that you're able to be here today and talk about the story behind the story. Being a reporter I guess there's a guard that one must put up. You know, you must have to keep some sort of personal boundaries, you know, as a reporter. But since I have you here, we're going to dig in a little bit. Yeah. Reporters tell other people's stories.
Yes.
But what's your story behind this, if you don't mind my asking? Reveal as much as you want. Why is these stories about Indigenous peoples important to you?
Well, you know, as an Indigenous person myself, you know, representation is huge. And not to say that, you know, non-Native reporters can't do stories on Native issues, but at least locally, they're not, right? And that's no knock against any other reporter or journalistic, you know, outlet or anything like that. But it gives you that extra drive to really dig into these stories, understand the angles, understand the people behind, you know, the voices and things like that. So that's kind of my drive for these Indigenous pieces.
You know, and the passion for the work is palpable. I mean, you can feel it in the reporting, the way that you dig, the sensitivity, the empathy, the storytelling. And I, as a listener, appreciate it, and I know that our fellow WBFO listeners do as well. If you can possibly help support this with a membership pledge right now, please do at 1-877-456-8870 or at WBFO.org. It's really important to keep people like Ryan, reporters like Ryan out there digging into those local stories and bringing them to everyone's attention, sometimes speaking for people who don't have a very loud voice in the community. 1-877-456-8870. Thank you so much, Ryan Zunner. It's outstanding.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Good questions, too.
Oh, thank you. You know, I do my homework. I'm not a reporter, but I do my homework. How long do I have?
A bunch of time.
Right now, a bunch of time? Okay.
Get to the story in a couple minutes. I'll give you.
This is the longest story, so.
How long are we talking right now,
For
though?
like a minute.
Okay. To intro the story a little bit. Okay.
And then we'll go right to the story, then we can talk about it much more.
Okay.
Tell me when you're ready.
Ready? The story is ready?
We're gonna roll. We're gonna do camera 2 first, and then the story.
Camera 2. Okay.
Which is the middle.
Yeah, 2 shots.
That's it. That's right. Oh, okay. Yeah, that's it. We're ready.
Go.
We're at Unapologetic Coffee on Main Street in Buffalo, 899 Main Street in Buffalo, between Carlton and Virginia. If you know where Lovejoy Pizza is, we're directly across the street. We're in that new building, that new Best South building, doing live remote today. Come on in, have some coffee, see some live radio, some live YouTube. We're having a lot of fun today. My name is Marty Wimmer. I work at Buffalo Toronto Public Media, and I'm here with WBFO reporter Ryan Zunner, talking about his 4 favorite stories of the year of 2024 as we take your calls at 1-877-456-8870. And you can also check us out on the WBFO YouTube channel. Ryan, the next story we're going to be hearing about is UB's Indigenous Studies Department highlighting academic research. Catchy title. Tell us about it.
Yeah, so that was a great event that the Indigenous Studies program over at UB put on. They're experiencing a lot of growth. A lot of people don't know that their program kind of has existed since the 1970s, but only just recently got a bachelor's degree offering. So, they brought in all their professors and sort of grad students from that program, and were able to discuss this really in-depth research they're doing on Native topics that, just like Native media, isn't always talked about in those academic circles.
We're going to hear that story right now, and we'll talk to you again on the other side.
Alberta Palmer, Six Nations Tuscarora, says is rooted in colonialism, particularly the work of Dr. James V. Neal.
He did a lot of research on what he hypothesized was the thrifty gene theory, which was his idea that Native American people get diabetes more commonly because we are genetically predisposed to the disease. He came up with this theory first in 1962, and he got funding to research it. But since then, it's actually never been borne out in any genetic research that the thrifty gene theory actually exists in the world.
Alberta Palmer says Neal's first focused his research on Native tribes across the United States, but according to letters from the mid-1960s to colleagues, they had to be, quote, dirty Indians to satisfy the needs of his research. He categorized Native people he was looking into researching as, quote, wild Indian and tame Indian. After first visiting Navajo, Seminole, and Acamel Oadum territories and taking blood samples, Alberta Palmer says Neal's expressed frustration in his thrifty gene research. He blamed it on the 3 tribes not being truly indigenous under his genetic criteria.
There's no other sovereign nations where your genetic identity determines whether you have citizenship and membership. It is about being claimed. By that community, not by whether or not your genes match. Yet, however, this was his criteria. And so in order to find what he deemed pure or wild primitive people, he traveled down to Brazil and extracted blood and froze it and flew it back from a group called the Yanomami people.
Neal's use of the Brazilian Yanomami in his thrifty gene theory is something U.S. medical circles still promote. Alberta Palmer argues this assumption leads to inadequate action in helping her people and other tribes in addressing health disparities like diabetes, obesity, and heart disease.
The fact is that so much more research continues to go into the genetic basis for this kind of these kinds of illnesses, especially metabolic illnesses in our communities, when it's really actually systemic change that needs to happen.
Systemic change is something Haudenosaunee women know quite well. Clan mothers play an important role in the continuation of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, a form of government that dates back long before Europeans stepped foot in North America. Male chiefs didn't receive their position without the consensus and support from these influential women, and that traditional form of government continues to exist today, even with other political entities. Leadership from women in Haudenosaunee communities still plays a vital role even outside the bounds of traditional government. That's the Area Associate Professor Teresa McCarthy, Six Nations Onondaga, explored in her research, which put an emphasis on the role women played in the Caledonia land dispute in Ontario, which turned into direct action starting in 2006.
It was the first time in our 250-year history at Grand River that we've regained rather than lost our lands because of those actions.
McCarthy is working on putting a book together to serve as an archive of the leadership displayed by Haudenosaunee women during that extended dispute.
Leadership is also something that's thought about very differently in our communities. It's not a hierarchical way of thinking about it. You know, when you ask women what do we mean by leadership, they often talk about, we just act on our responsibilities. We are still supposed to be, traditionally, we are supposed to be equal with each other. One of the sayings is we're supposed to remain all trees of equal height.
The Indigenous Studies program not only promotes research and classroom learning, but something called land-based learning. It's led by Jason Corwin, a clinical assistant professor, and brings mostly underclass students to learn about the environment and traditional Haudenosaunee ways of living through firsthand experience. Taking trips to Tonawanda-Seneca territory to learn about Haudenosaunee farming techniques, Ganundigan living history site, and many days in the woods identifying plant species and honing bushcrafting skills that Indigenous people have been using for centuries. The Indigenous Studies Department hopes to restart the Research Symposium as an annual event to showcase the work its professors and students are doing to elevate Haudenosaunee culture and history in a higher education setting. Ryan Zunner, WBFO News.
Another fascinating Ryan Zunner story on WBFO. I'm Marty Wimmer here with Ryan Zunner, the reporter who just did that story with the UB Indigenous Studies Department. Ryan, what a great story. Tell us how you feel about it, hearing it a couple months later.
It still feels very, current for sure, and, certainly appreciative that right in our own backyard here in Buffalo, we have a program like that, that really will attract people from all over the country to study Indigenous studies. And one of their main points too, it shows the diverse areas that Indigenous studies cover, whether it's health, history, environment. There are so many crossovers with an Indigenous studies degree and learning environment that it's applicable to a lot of different fields, and they really did a good job at presenting that. And it was just really interesting to talk to a lot of those professors and the work they do.
Speaking of a good job, you did a great job reporting on it. We have another important story, too, that Ryan did from 2024 coming up in just a little while here on WBFO. We are today having a lot of fun. In addition to listening to some of these serious stories, we are what we call doing a remote today. We are live at 899 Main Street in Buffalo. If you know downtown Buffalo at all, we're right on Main Street between Virginia and Carlton, and the new Best Self building. There's a wonderful new coffee shop here called Unapologetic Coffee, and we're speaking with the owners today and talking to our reporters from WBFO as we ask you to become a member of WBFO at 1-877-456-8870. And if you'd like to see us, go to YouTube. We are at the WBFO YouTube channel as well. Just go to YouTube, look for WBFO, and you'll find our YouTube channel, and you can see what Ryan Zunner looks like, which is everybody's waiting for, right? Right,
exactly. Face reveal.
So we're having so much fun today, listening to some really good stories and really focusing on a local business this morning, because our focus is local. We try to even take international, national stories and boil them down, break them down to what it means for us living right here in Western New York and Southern Ontario. Yeah, 1-877-456-8870 is the phone number if you would like to become a member, and we certainly hope you will. You can also pledge online at WBFO.org. And Ryan, we're going to be talking with you a little bit later on about another one of your stories. Mm-hmm. But as a reporter at WBFO, which is a public radio station, talk a little bit about how member dollars, the great people who call 1-877-456-8870, how much those dollars mean to you to be able to tell these important stories that aren't told in other places.
Right. Yeah. I mean, those that money goes directly to supporting a lot of these causes and initiatives, and areas of reporting that, certainly I think the community cares about, but is just kind of lost in the commercial media atmosphere, right? And here in public media, we're able to sort of take that step up and really look over things and see what the stories are and what's being not reported on.
Right,
a lot of times in media, just in general, you always think like, being the first one to get the kind of story. We want to be the one that gets the story that no one else is getting, right? That is the more impactful, more important thing, and I think our listeners really do appreciate that other look at things that maybe other media outlets are missing or isn't the most or loudest voice in a conversation.
Right. That's very interesting. The loudest voice in the conversation often gets the most attention, but it's not always the one that deserves the attention.
Right.
Sometimes you need to dig in a little deeper and find those people who maybe aren't able to get their stories told.
Right.
And that seems to be something that you dig into quite a bit as a reporter at WBFO. These stories that we've heard this morning, they're all focused on Indigenous peoples here in Western New York, and we've heard 3 so far. All fascinating. We still have another one coming up in just a little while, so I do hope that you will stay with us for that. But if you've just tuned in, we are at Unapologetic Coffee this morning at 899 Main Street in Buffalo, between Carlton and Virginia, just south of Allen Street. So if you know where we are, come on, stop in, have a coffee. It smells great in here. Great fresh roast coffee. Helping and spending some time with a local business this morning. Our focus is on local. I mean, we talk about everything around the world and beyond on WBFO, but our focus right here on the local story with a local reporter, and it's really a lot of fun. So come on down to Unapologetic Coffee, 899 Main Street in Buffalo, and if you can, make a membership pledge at 1-877-456-8870. That's 1-877-456-8870, or at WBFO.org. Ryan, what do you think about this membership drive so far? We're on the second day, and your stories are really impactful to the people listening. Tell us about how these stories affect you as a reporter, and more importantly, the listener, and how the listener might respond to them with a membership pledge.
Well, oftentimes with Indigenous stories, being done as a reporter, again, you're talking to people who, really are never reached out to from the press and things like that. So, certainly from a professional standpoint, you really do find that you're getting that story that others are missing or not getting. And so it is gratifying in that sense. From a personal standpoint, there's a lot of mistrust or misdeeds and traumas that are associated with Indigenous people. So part of it is having to represent your industry, your line of work, and really repair, some of those bridges and things like that. Especially locally here, in the area. So, it's not an easy job, but it's a job that I like to do, and a lot of the reporters in the newsroom, appreciate the drive that you have to have.
I'm hearing, if you're only listening on radio, or even on YouTube, if you're seeing it on YouTube, you're probably hearing some noise. Like right now, boy, that timing couldn't have been any more perfect, right? The noise that we're hearing, well, we are live. We are at Unapologetic Coffee on Main Street, 899 Main Street in Buffalo, and we're hearing the coffee being made.
Yes.
That's what's going on right now. Come on down, 899 Main Street, Unapologetic Coffee in the new Best Self building. If you're listening, want to see us on YouTube, go to the WBFO YouTube channel and join us there. And most importantly, if you can, please make a membership pledge in support of WBFO at 1-877-456-8870. We are a station that is committed to telling the stories of local people. And often local people whose stories aren't being told in other places. And that's what Ryan has been focusing on in 2024. 4 great stories about Indigenous peoples here in Western New York. We've heard 3 of the stories so far this morning. We're going to be enjoying or listening to another one in just a few moments. Ryan, this 4th story coming up, just give us a little overview of what we're going to hear.
Yeah, so it was, a certainly historic event, then President Biden, visiting a Native American reservation in the Southwest and apologizing for the federal government's role in the residential boarding school system in the United States. It's something that hadn't, officially happened. There'd been some, minor apologies in decades past by some lower-level government officials, but it's certainly the eyes of the Native American world were on your TV screens or there that day.
Yeah.
So it certainly was a story that had to be told, and again from many different angles as well.
I remember I got to preview the story obviously, and I remember thinking for people, the recipients of the apology, it's very, very meaningful. It was emotional.
It was certainly emotional for a lot of people. The crowd there in Arizona, I believe it was, had. Like we talked about before, almost every Native American has a direct connection to those residential boarding schools. So a lot of survivors themselves were there. Families of victims of the boarding school system were there. So it was certainly, again, a moment to come together and listen to a lot of things. Very, very important reporting, and it's what we do at WBFO. We tell the stories that maybe aren't being told everywhere. Maybe sometimes aren't the sexiest stories or the most sensational stories, but they're important stories and stories that need to be told, and your dollars allow us to do that. Please don't underestimate the role you have in making sure that important stories are told. Support WBFO if you can right now with a membership pledge at 1-877-456-8870. Maybe give a pledge on behalf of somebody who is not in a position to make a pledge. You can help in that way as well for the community. The phone number is 1-877-456-8870 or pledge at WBFO.org. Ryan Zunner, thank you. I'm Marty Wimmer, and there's more to come. We're here at Unapologetic Coffee here on Main Street, WBFO on location, and I'm here with Marty Wimmer, and we've been able to go over some of the stories I've done for the Indigenous Desk on WBFO, and we're going to hear the 4th and final one, what we just talked about a little bit before, of then President Biden apologizing to Native American people for the government's role in the federal boarding school system.
News that this apology took 50 years to make. The federal Indian boarding school policy, the pain it has caused, will always be a significant mark of shame, a blot on American history.
President Biden's apology comes on the heels of Secretary of the Interior Deb Haaland's 3-year report on the Indian boarding school system. Haaland herself is an enrolled member of the Laguna Pueblo. That report and the president's apology doesn't sit well with Mohawk activist and talk show host John Kane.
What's painfully obvious is the absence of the word genocide. The Canadian cultural genocide, which I think is, a bit of a shambles. If you look at the definition of genocide, it's all about intent, the intent to make a people no longer exist. Kill the Indian, save the man wasn't a metaphor. You don't need a graveyard for metaphors. You need a graveyard for dead children.
Western New York was home to 3 different boarding schools, the Tonawanda Mission School, Seneca Mission School, and the Thomas Indian School. The legacy of the Thomas School is one that hits home for many Seneca people, including nation councilor and presidential candidate J.C. Seneca. He helped with Holland's report by gathering 17 pages of testimony and information on the Thomas Indian School, where his father once attended.
Stories of children playing in their yard, a van or a vehicle stops, and people get out and they come and they grab the children and take them, and the parents won't see them again. And they were unable to find them and talk with them because they were held basically captive and prisoner in these schools.
Seneca believes President Biden's apology is a start to a healing process, but says more needs to be done in terms of investigation.
I think anytime a leader of the country like Joe Biden, the president, steps forward and apologizes for those wrongdoings, I think it's a big step. The other thing is to also be involved again, as I had been in the past, with the federal government and the Department of Interior to advocate and push for continued investigation.
While the Thomas Indian School did receive some federal funding, the school was operated in Cattaraugus by New York State for over 50 years. No governor has acknowledged or apologized for the state's role in boarding schools, and WBFO's request for comment from Governor Kathy Hochul's office was not returned. Kane says the state is missing an opportunity to be a part of the healing process.
New York State has an obligation too. And so, beyond words like reconciliation, I think there's an obligation to right a wrong.
Kane says the history between state government and Haudenosaunee tribes has never been great, and issues still persist today. Whether that's the freezing of Seneca Nation bank accounts, land disputes, or taxation battles, something J.C. Seneca knows firsthand, being involved in nation government and seeking its highest office.
The state inflicts trauma on Native communities here within New York, especially here at Seneca Nation. The actions that they do, I don't know if they care or they don't think about it, but their actions speak louder than words. And those types of situations that they have done is traumatizing and continue to cycle within our communities.
Part of the Interior report recommends federal action on several fronts to remedy damage done to Native communities. That includes investment in physical and mental health programs and research, redress of Native education, funding traditional language programs, repatriation of remains, and a national monument. Biden's apology in Arizona was also part of that plan, which is politically timed.
I think it was a cheap political stunt. All places to go, you happen to go to a swing state to appeal to what some people are claiming is a population that may or may not, affect the outcome of a race in Arizona. I find an apology less than 2 weeks before the election, again, a bit of a political stunt.
Ryan Zunner, WBFO News.
Very important story. Ryan Zunner, the reporter on that story, sitting next to me here. If you're watching on YouTube, my name's Marty Wimmer, and wow, powerful story and a powerful thing that former President Biden did, and very emotional for those who received the apology.
Yes. Yeah, and there's a wide range of emotions certainly in the Native community on that. I think all of them agree that it's a good first step, but there were certainly criticisms that he never used the word genocide, which is what a lot of Native people really wanted to hear in an apology like that. They want to see action, which is why we had John Kane, who's a very powerful Native activist voice from the area. He talked about he wants to see action. There are parts of that apology that came with action plans, but as Native people who scorned certainly by the government over the years, it's a lot of wait and see.
We heard 4 of your stories today focusing on Indigenous peoples, and if you could, in 15 seconds, just give us a wrap on what you feel about these 4 stories, and just sort of sum it up for us.
It's bringing a voice to the voiceless, which ultimately I think is the role of public media, and really of the general press, but particularly public media. And that stuff doesn't happen without donations and support.
Absolutely. Ryan Zunner, great reporting, and we look forward to many more stories, stories that aren't being told, stories that need to be told. Sometimes stories from people who don't have a voice, don't have a lot of power in the world today. And wow, very, very good. Thank you, Ryan Zunner. We are at Unapologetic Coffee on Main Street, 899 Main Street in Buffalo. We're live, we're remote. This is kind of fun. Lots of people coming in. If you're hearing sounds and odd sounds, like what's going on at that radio station, well, we're actually in a coffee shop, and so we're hearing the sights and sounds and experiences of a local coffee shop. What do you think of the aroma here, Ryan?
I love it. Coffee's great too.
Coffee is great.
Yeah.
So come on down, 899 Main Street in Buffalo. Unapologetic Coffee in that new Best Self building across from Lovejoy Pizza, just south of Allen Street, between Allen and Virginia. We're on the east side of the street. Love to have you stop in, say hello, see the live radio and YouTube team here, and yeah, having a really good time today. And most of all, we hope that you recognize the importance of public media in your life, in your community, in our local community, and that you will make a membership pledge in support of it now at 1-877-456-8870. We'd love to get a rally of support right now, 1-877-456-8870. Ryan, before we say so long for today, any final thoughts?
Just really appreciative that we have, a public media outlet like this in Buffalo. This is a place where, I interned at college, worked part-time, and just really grateful to be back here and supporting the work.
Okay, we're going to go back now. We'll talk to you again on the other side. That number is 1-877-456-8870. Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Marty Wimmer here at Unapologetic Coffee at 899 Main Street in Buffalo, here with one of the owners, Alisa. Officer, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, it's great to be here. If you'd like to stop by, we'd love to have you come in, see some live radio, some live YouTube, have a great cup of coffee here at Unapologetic Coffee, 899 Main Street in Buffalo, just south of Carlton, between Carlton and Virginia. If you know where Lovejoy Pizza is, we're right across the street from there. Basically just down a little bit from Allen Street.
Yeah,
so come on in. So if you're hearing sounds, boy, the timing is perfect. Was that an espresso machine?
Yeah, that was a grinder.
Grinder. Just got started. We are having a great time here today. And so Alisa, officer, is one of the owners of Unapologetic Coffee. It's been here for what, a few months now in this location,
Since December,
right?
so almost a month. Yeah,
almost
a little over a month.
Wow, how's it going so far?
It's been great. It's literally been a whirlwind because we had to move everything from our old location to our new location. New products and new merchandise. So it's been a little bit of a change, but we love it.
Yeah, great. You were up. Where were you before? Up
we were
Main
at
Street?
Main and Utica, but we decided to split our roasting business from our cafe business. So it's been perfect.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. There's also food here as well.
Yes, we get food catered. We cater food, but we also have local businesses we work with, like Zio's Deli, Logan's for our bagels, Emerson, and we're working with them, the School of Hospitality for our cinnamon rolls.
Wow.
Yeah, so we try to keep things as local as we can.
That is really important, and I love that local connection that seems to be important to you as well. We share that with you at Buffalo Toronto Public Media.
Absolutely.
And at WBFO because, we're concerned about the world, of course, and the nation and the state, but we really love the local. And on our radio station, we love to tell the local stories, like your local business.
Yeah.
And I love the fact that you like to support local businesses as well.
It's very important to us. I mean, we know, like you said, we care about the world, but it starts, at the ground level, and then it works its way up. So if you don't think about your home first, you can't, help the rest of the world.
Absolutely. It begins at home, right?
Yeah.
Those good things. Tell us a little bit how this business got started. I spoke with your sister about it. She had a great story. I want to hear the twin sisters version of the story now.
There's always the opposite version. So,
That's right.
My twin sister and I, it really started off kind of like as a pact. We have this thing that we do when we want each other to do something, but we really don't want to do it. So it's called like your twin card, and I'm like, I really wanted to go to Europe. And so we went, and then she said, okay, my turn is next. And I said, okay. She goes, well, let's open this coffee shop. And I'm like, no. And she goes, twin card. And I'm like, no. She twin carded me, and we decided to start off in COVID, which wasn't a great idea. But the reason why it ended up being great for us was we learned to pivot. So we learned to roast coffee instead of just serving coffee. So everyone thought we were kind of crazy, but by learning in roasting coffee, we actually learned more about the business end of coffee versus just serving coffee. We weren't even going to buy it and source it from ourselves. We were going to look elsewhere. So by chance, one day, people came in and they were asking us, can we get a cup of coffee? And we laughed and we were like, sure. like we have our own mugs and we tasted our coffee, but we didn't really sell it at the time.
Right.
And so my sister looked at me and was like, can we do this? I was like, give me a weekend. And so I always tell her, like, she's the visionary and I'm her muscle. So if she asks for something, I can make it shake.
That's great. Now, I found out, and I was looking at your roasts. I wrote them down here. Let's see if I can find them. You have a roast called Flow, and you have a roast called Hustle.
Yes.
Now, you were talking about the twin card.
Yes.
Tell me what is important about these two coffee roasts.
So I'm Hustle and she's Flow, 1,000%. She is the late night. She can be up on her computer sending me texts and emails at 2 a.m, and I am up at 5 most mornings because I'm also an educator. So I get up, and our light roast, Hustle, has more caffeine. So we joke around like that's the coffee for me. But we drink coffee all throughout the day, and Flow is great for the afternoons or evenings too.
Right.
So I say that I'm Hustle and she's Flow.
So you named your two of your coffee roasts after yourselves. How
we
cool
like
is
to
that?
name them. It gives them a little bit of a flair.
Well, you want to hear some of the other ones that I loved? I'm sorry, I was snooping around before the camera went on. We had one. You have one called Hey Doc. It's a medium roast. Tell us about that one.
So Hey Doc is actually named after our grandfather. His name is Henry Holt. His name is not Doc. But when he picks up the phone, he's like, hey Doc, whenever he picks up the phone. And when our grandmother passed away, unfortunately, he made a promise, like, I'm going to listen, I promise. And it was the decaf, and she would not allow him to have any caffeinated coffee.
Okay.
So he said, girls, I would love to support you, but I can't have decaf. So we spent about 2 years researching a quality decaf that he could have that was clean. So really, when we say it's not your granddad's decaf, it's for our granddad.
Okay, so this isn't like Sanka.
No, not at all. This is a Peruvian Swiss water decaf.
Right. Here's another one I like. This one is called, let's see, is it black mixed with black?
Black mixed with black, yes.
Tell us about that.
So most of them are inside jokes between my sister and I. Black mixed with black is kind of because people always asked us when we were younger, are you mixed with something? And we started to say that, no, we're black mixed with black. and so it's an extra dark Indonesian coffee. So it's our inside joke between ourselves.
All right, well, we're going to have to cut away now, and there's one more I want to talk to you about. But right now, we'd love to hear from you at 1-877-456-8870. Join us at Unapologetic Coffee, 899 Main Street. Good morning. My name is Marty Wimmer, and I'm here with Holly Kirkpatrick, one of the reporters at WBFO, and we are live at Unapologetic Coffee at 899 Main Street in Buffalo, New York. We are just south of Allen Street, between Virginia and Allen. Come on in, have a great cup of coffee, see some live radio, some live YouTube. And Holly, you are one of the great reporters at WBFO. Welcome to Unapologetic Coffee this morning.
Happy to be here. Super pumped.
Now, I understand we're going to be listening to and talking about some of your favorite recent stories on WBFO. The first one we're going to be talking about is, tell us about it.
I believe we're going to go to one about voting in Buffalo. So obviously last year, 2024, whether you wanted to hear about it or not, the presidential election was a huge dominant story in the news cycle across the country. This was a little local take on that, in particular about voting itself, about the act of democracy itself. I think the story kind of speaks for itself, actually, so maybe we should hear it.
Well, we'll hear the story now, and we'll talk about it on the other side. Here goes.
There's not what to talk about, so that's a refuse.
Tyrell Ford knows why that might be.
Because we know that our community has turned off and has a
NPR station
distrust.
on this Thanksgiving. I'm Ryan Zunner. Today is a day in which American families come together for food, football, and fun. While many countries celebrate a Thanksgiving, in the United States it's still very rooted in the colonial period and the first Thanksgiving, which historically wasn't a great period for Native American people. But the act of giving thanks, making a lifestyle of it, is deeply rooted in Haudenosaunee culture and tradition.
We're taught to do.
We want to get folks to sign pledge cards.
The pledge cards are a little bigger than a regular postcard and are emblazoned with the date of Election Day, November 5th. Those who answer the door and say they intend to vote will be asked to voluntarily make a pledge to do so and to seal the deal by signing the card.
I love this initiative really because it is putting the power back into the voter.
Jasmine Westbrook works with the Healthcare Education Project, the lead organisation for the non-partisan initiative that includes Voice Buffalo, the Buffalo Urban League Young Professionals, Open Buffalo, and the New York Civic Engagement Table.
We're sending it back to the registered voter in mid-October, right before early voting starts, so people are reminded of the commitment that they made. So although it's August, they may forget our conversation, but when they get this postcard in the mail, it'll be a reminder.
Westbrook says low propensity voters in the 14214 and 14215 zip codes are on their radar. Data from the US Census Bureau shows the population in those two zip codes is mostly Black, Asian, or Hispanic. And the latest data indicates that registered Black, Asian, or Hispanic voters do not use their vote as much as registered white voters in New York State.
I've always lived on the east side of Buffalo. It's always been a low number of turnout, whether it's a local election, presidential, we usually have more, but it's still low compared to other parts of our area.
Figures from 2022 show that 79% of registered white voters in the state turned out to the polls, compared to 67% of registered Black voters, 64% of registered Hispanic voters, and 56% of registered Asian voters. Professor Connor Dowling of the University at Buffalo's Department of Political Science says that the group's door-to-door approach is the most likely to put a dent in these numbers and get voters to the ballot box.
The more personal the contact, the more effective it tends to be.
He says that generally speaking, low-propensity voters become so due to the sheer number of elections that take place in the United States, as well as a general lack of education and media coverage of elections other than the presidential race every 4 years. And there are often structural barriers that may deter people come election day.
Those are those things that different people face to different degrees in terms of just being able to get time off work or making sure they can just schedule their lives around voting, we might say.
And why is it important for campaigns, or maybe that's the wrong question, why is it important for campaigns or democracy for these voters to be mobilized?
So I think it's important on both counts, both for campaigns and for democracy. From a campaign's perspective, so say for a political campaign, like a partisan campaign, they're identifying low propensity voters who they think are also likely to vote for them, right, to support them as candidates. From a democratic standpoint, small d democratic, right, for democracy, it's important because the more people that vote, the more people have a voice in the system. And I think from a general perspective, the better we feel about that the people is who's electing people, and it's not just some small group of people who vote all the time.
And that's the motivation for Ford and the collaborative's nonpartisan efforts.
Even though folks are distrusted in the process, it's still a process. Our ancestors fought so hard to have this process, and it's up to us to continue and teach our next generation that part of the process is sometimes you get what you want, sometimes you don't. But if you continue to stay out of the process, you lose your voice.
Holly Kirkpatrick, WBFO News.
What a fascinating story. My name's Marty Wimmer, here with the reporter who told the story, Holly Kirkpatrick.
Hello.
Wow, when you rehear it again, what do you think?
Well, I think about how I found the story, first of all, and I think about the fact that I was there on site at the place where they were training the people to volunteer, to knock down doors, to get people to the polls. And actually, it seems like such a long time ago because it was all the way back in August, which in the news world is like 5 years. The equivalent of 5 years. But yeah, that was a story, as I said beforehand, it was a dominant story in the news cycle. And I think that showcases how we can we can make something that is national, hyper-local, basically. And we really looked at the way that people were trying to mobilize voters, not only here in Buffalo, but as you heard in the story, specifically to 2 zip codes in the city. Yeah.
Very, very fascinating. You know, we are right now at Unapologetic Coffee at 899 Main Street in Buffalo, just south of Allen Street on the east side of the street in that new Best South building. We are live today at a local business, and we think that's a great metaphor for WBFO because as though we tell you the stories of the universe and the world and the international world and everything, we love to focus on those local stories. And your story right now, focusing on those low propensity voters in Buffalo, was very local, dealing with folks right here in Buffalo.
Yeah, right here in Buffalo. And if you think about it, in one way we zoomed out because WBFO, yes, we do cover local election races. We cover the people running for office. On election night, we were out there doing local coverage, saying, you know, who looked to be ahead according to the votes that were coming in. We were doing all that live stuff. But this one zooms out to look at actually the issue of democracy itself, of voting itself. And as I said, it also zooms in at the same time to make it hyper-local.
You know, reporters are experts at telling stories, and sometimes telling stories that need to be told that aren't necessarily told because, you know, some people don't have voices as loud as others in the community or platforms to tell their stories. I'm going to do something to a reporter that a reporter may not like now. Tell us a little of your story. What is your story? Tell us how you got here and why this story that you told meant so much to you.
Well, why I am here, my story, I'm trying to think, see, I'm already clamming up. I'm clamming up.
I knew that would happen.
Yeah, my story is I'm here in Buffalo. I'm from the UK originally, as the accent might be a dead giveaway. No, this accent is not from Cheektowaga, unbelievably. So yeah, I'm from the United Kingdom. I've been here though for, I think I worked out this is going to be about my 9th year, which I cannot believe. But I'm here and I choose to be here. I came here originally for work, and then I stayed here, and that's what's happened. I'm happy to be here. It's a massive privilege to be a reporter in Buffalo and in Western New York as well, and I really love it, even on snowy days like today.
You know, Buffalo's like that. It's sort of there's something just very warm and welcoming about it. Even though it's cold outside, the people are very warm. And I also am not from here originally, though I've spent my entire adult life here, and I found that as well. It just sort of envelops you, and I just wanted to stay.
Yeah.
And these local stories are obviously important to you, important to me, and important to WBFO. And we hope that you will make a membership pledge in support of WBFO at 1-877-456-8870. We are in a coffee shop now. This is really fun and different, right?
Yeah, and there's lights and cameras and things like that. And usually as radio reporters, I make my stories in a tiny little dark booth with no one looking at me. So this is interesting. And a lovely lady called Sherry put makeup on me and everything. It was very exciting. Yeah, so exciting.
Yeah, you know, that doesn't happen to us all the time in radio, but that's how it is. The phone number is 1-877-456-8870. You can pledge online at WBFO.org. We'll speak more with Holly in just a little bit. we're going to talk to Holly about another aspect of being a reporter at WBFO, and that is the importance of members. People who call 1-877-456-8870 or pledge online at WBFO supply the dollars needed so that Holly can tell these stories. Tell us, as a reporter, what it means to you to have these dollars supplied to us so that you can tell these stories.
Yeah, well, firstly, good morning, everybody. I'm Holly Kirkpatrick from WBFO. I'm a reporter here. And having those dollars, 50% of our operating budget comes from member support. So listeners just like you who donate to this station, that is how we operate. That's how we bring you the programming that you love and enjoy. And it's also how we bring you the local news. And we've got lots of people in the newsroom working really hard to bring you that local news as well. So if this is ringing a bell with you, if this is something that you value, then please consider making a donation to this station at 1-877-456-8870. You can also donate online at WBFO.org.
Well, it's great to be here with you, Holly, and you are just, from my perspective as a listener, one of the bright lights at WBFO, great reporter, and telling the stories that need to be told. And we're thrilled you're here and joined us today talking about some of the stories that you have done in the past year that were meaningful to you. We hope now that you will, dear listener and viewer on YouTube, will make that call now at 1-877-456-8870 and support the station that tells these local stories. We're going to be hearing another one of your great stories in just a moment, so let's enjoy that. We'll talk on the other side. I'll leave you with the phone number, 1-877-456-8870. I'm Marty Wimmer here with Holly Kirkpatrick at Unapologetic Coffee on Main Street in Buffalo, 899 Main Street. Come on down, have a cup of coffee, see some live radio, some live YouTube. And we're going to be hearing one of Holly Kirkpatrick's favorite stories that she did in the last few months on WBFO. This one, tell us a little bit about it. It's called Black Doll Exhibit.
Yeah, well, this was a story that was aired during Black History Month, so almost a year ago now, and it is about an exhibit that was on at the Buffalo and Erie County Public Library, which was an exhibit of somebody's collection of black dolls. And again, the story really speaks for itself. I don't want to tread on its toes, so I think that we should give it a listen.
All right, we're going to give it a listen.
A queen, a number one boss on top of her game.
Recognizing royalty is the theme of this year's Black Doll exhibit at the Central Branch of the Buffalo and Erie County Public Library. Doll collector Alisa is the curator of the event, which has been happening every February since 2020 in celebration of Black History Month.
So if I come across a doll that is dressed like a queen or a princess or gives that vibe, then I'm all about adding it to my collection.
That collection currently totals 200 dolls, according to Lisa, around 20 of which are on display in this year's exhibit. There are fictional characters such as Ariel from Disney's The Little Mermaid, as well as dolls that represent real-life inspirational Black women, figures such as civil rights activist Rosa Parks and NASA mathematician Katherine Johnson. But Lisa says her favourite section this year presents Black dolls either designed, created or manufactured by people of colour.
As a collector, as a curator, it's about the meaning behind the doll. And I do go a little bit deeper with who's manufacturing it and how are they manufacturing it? And is it accurately representing a person of color? Is it just a white doll that you painted black and threw a wig on it? As opposed to a doll that was manufactured by the heart of someone who really wanted to appeal to a person of color and wanted that parent and that child to truly embrace beauty, higher self-esteem, and know that they can reach the stars regardless of what they look like.
And dolls can be a powerful indicator of a person's self-perception. In fact, the exhibit tells of a scientific experiment that arguably proves just that. In the 1940s, the doll was carried out by psychologists Kenneth and Mamie Clark in an attempt to study the development of self-esteem in black children. In the test, which was carried out on many children separately, 2 dolls were placed in front of each child. 1 doll was black and 1 doll was white. Then each child was asked a series of questions.
For example, which is the nice doll? Which doll do you like? Which doll do you prefer? Those types of questions. And more often than not, the children preferred the white doll.
The Clarks found that prejudice, discrimination, and segregation had negatively impacted how black children saw themselves in the world. And over a decade later, the study underpinned the argument against racial segregation in schools in the 1954 U.S. Supreme Court case Brown v. Board of Education. In a landmark ruling, the Supreme Court justices unanimously found that racial segregation in schools was unconstitutional.
I always use that as a backdrop to get people to think about how far we've come with dolls, how far we've come with society, and tying it back to how effective dolls can be.
And perhaps that effectiveness has played out in Lisa's own life. She says that although black dolls were scarce when she was a little girl, by the time her own daughter was playing with dolls in the 80s and 90s, lots more were available.
And I jumped on it. I bought the dolls. I loved the fact that my daughter could see these cool dolls, and it worked out.
And when she says it worked out, she means it. Lisa's daughter is chair of the Erie County Legislature, April Baskin, who's sponsored the exhibit.
She came up with the idea, and we did this to celebrate Black history.
The Black Doll exhibit will be at the Central Library through April 9th. Holly Kirkpatrick, WBFO News.
Marty Wimmer here at WBFO with Holly Kirkpatrick, the reporter that told that story. So tell us about the twist at the end.
Oh, well, you just heard it. The twist at the end was obviously that the whole story was about the power of representation. And you heard the doll collector there, Lisa, saying how, when she was younger, there weren't really that many black dolls available to her. And so, but then when her daughter was younger, she saw much more and she bought more and more. And then she said it really worked, gave some self-esteem. And her daughter is April Baskin, who is now actually, at the time of the story, she was Erie County, in the Erie County Legislature. Now she is a state senator. So that was the twist at the end.
Very nice twist. I know April, and a great story. I'm here with Holly Kirkpatrick, one of the reporters at WBFO who told that story. My name is Marty Wimmer, also at Buffalo Toronto Public Media. I work down the hall at WNED Classical, but every once in a while I'll come over and join my friends down the hall at WBFO. And to help you understand the importance of your membership here at the station, 1-877-456-8870 if you'd like to make a membership pledge. Holly, tell us why you had a passion to tell that story that you just told.
Well, I think it's really important to look at what's going on in the community, what's going on out and about. And as I mentioned earlier, it was Black History Month at the time. That's when that story originally aired. And so I looked at what was going on in the city, in the area, to celebrate that. And that exhibit was on at the library. And I went down, checked it out, and then I thought, yep, this is going to make a story. And I tracked down the curator, as you heard, Lisa Jacobs-Watson, and the story happened.
That's great. It's really, really a fascinating story. I think it's fun to talk to reporters and get their story as to why they told a story. Reporters are so excellent at telling other people's stories, but telling your story behind the story, I think, is really cool that you had a passion for that. So thanks for sharing that. I know it's not your favorite thing to do.
We don't like it when the tables are turned.
Not at all.
But it's healthy for us. It makes us remember what everybody else goes through when we shove a microphone in their face. Yeah.
Well, that's just great. So we are on YouTube. So if you'd like to of course, join us on YouTube, it is WBFO on YouTube. And, of course, we're at regular radio station, when we're there on and off this morning. But we certainly hope that right now that you will make a membership pledge in support of WBFO at 1-877-456-8870. Holly, it is our listeners who supply the dollars that make all of this possible. Our listeners make all of this possible with member dollars. Tell us, as a reporter, how those dollars affect you and your job. I mean, obviously they make it possible for you. And what does it do? How does it feel to know that you're getting this support to tell these stories?
Well, again, I'm Holly Kirkpatrick from WBFO. Good morning, everybody. Happy to be here. So what does it mean to me? Well, I take my mission, is what I see it as working a public service organization really seriously. And the journalism that I provide is always I try to deliver to that mission, to serve the public. You know, of course, I have my bosses at Buffalo, Toronto Public Media, but really the people that I actually answer to are you, the listener, the public. And without your donations, it's not going to be possible to bring, you know, local news, local programming on the airwaves that you so much enjoy, that we've interrupted actually to bring you this pledge break.
Well, there you go. Where are we and what's going on if you've just tuned in? Well, we are live this morning at Unapologetic Coffee at 899 Main Street in Buffalo, just south of Carlton, between Carlton and Virginia, across the street from Lovejoy Pizza, if you know where that is. If you know where the corner of Allen Street and Main are, we're just down in the next block on the other side of the street, on the east side of the street. And we'd love to have you join us at Unapologetic Coffee. We talked to some the local business owners here who own this business and got to know them about this shop and how this all came about. Pretty fascinating story. We're also talking to reporters this morning from WBFO, talking about their favorite stories that they did in the past year. Earlier we had Ryan Zunner here, a name you probably recognize, and now with Holly Kirkpatrick. And Holly, we're going to be listening to another one of your favorite, is that the right word, favorite stories of the year, or one that was meaningful to you?
Yeah, I would put it that way, certainly. I've tried to select things that showcase, you know, how we deal with certain items that might be a national news story and then make them more local, and to really showcase us out there in the community, bringing you the local news programming that you have come to expect from us.
So this story that we're going to be listening to in just a bit is about what and why did you choose to do that story?
Oh, do you know what it's about? Are you ready?
Yeah.
It's so exciting. It's about property tax.
Oh, well, but you make it interesting and fun, right?
Of course I do. Absolutely. And you know what? If you want to get people talking, and the story starts that way, if you want to get an American talking, starting a conversation about taxes, you know, that's the thing that gets the people going, is what I will say.
On forever.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm
Since
pretty
we
sure.
broke away from that other country.
Pretty sure there's some beef there, yeah, between my homeland and this one over those taxes.
Well, it's great. So tell us, why did you tell the story? I mean, what do you have a certain interest in this issue of taxes? Or, yeah?
I mean, yeah, it's one of the certainties of life. Well, this the next story was really about property tax because I was covering the city budget, and Mayor Byron Brown, who was mayor at the time, obviously has now stepped down. He proposed a significant property tax hike at the time of 9%, and the next story we were going to hear is basically everybody's take on that. And that's why I said, you know, you get an American talking, talk about taxes, off you go. And it really was on the street talking to various people about that proposition in the next city budget at the time.
Let's see if we can get some listeners off and running on taxes. Let's also see if we can get some listeners and some YouTube viewers to make some pledges right now in support of this type of storytelling. And Holly, the phone number is right there, 1-877-456-8870. Folks can call in and support what you do.
Yep, people can also donate by going to our website, WBFO.org. We like to make it nice and easy for you. It is going to take 5 minutes or so. We're going to just take your name, obviously some accounting information, because you are going to, if you're calling that number, you're going to be doing it to making a donation after all. And but it should just take a few moments of your day.
Great. That phone number is 1-877-456-8870. And here is Holly's story now. We'll talk on the other side.
You don't look very pleased with that.
I am not pleased with it at all, especially for homeowners like myself who has owned adjacent lots or owned empty lots. We are paying a user fee and we are not provided with a trash can. We cannot put out trash. I don't know why I'm paying a user fee for an empty lot.
I speak with Dorian Gaskin. He's a homeowner in the Hamlin Park area and the landlord of other properties on the city's east side.
I think the math isn't mathing. Some things aren't adding up. People in Buffalo, especially on the east side, we're like taxed and pushed to the limit, and now you're asking us for more.
If this 9% tax hike went into effect, how likely is it that you're going to pass some of that on to your tenants through raising rents, for example?
It's 100% likely because it's a chain reaction. It's not just the taxes, it's also the user fees, also the water bills. Everything's going up.
On the sidewalks of the Elmwood Village, local homeowners and neighbours Jack Schweigel and Dave Costello are enjoying a morning coffee and brewing on the budget.
I mean, for me, it's not going to kill me. I'm not going to lose my house or anything over it. I just would hope that we put to better use and more appropriate use and not just squandered away somehow.
I think it's too high. I think maybe about half of what it is would be appropriate, but it just seemed to be a lot all at once.
So there's going to be a public hearing on this? Is that the sort of thing that you would turn out to or no?
No, I'll just sit here and complain.
The Buffalo Common Council has the power to amend the budget, which they must pass by May 22nd. Holly Kirkpatrick, WBFO News.
Another fascinating story told to us by Holly Kirkpatrick, who I'm sitting here with now.
Hello.
Hi, Holly.
Hi.
So talk a little bit about the story we just heard.
Well, as you heard, that was me sort of out and about, which is my favorite part of this job is actually going outside of the office, outside of the newsroom and talking to people. And I really enjoyed that because it was sort of traditional journalism, let's get out there and see what people think of this property tax hike proposal in the city of Buffalo. So finding those homeowners to speak with, hearing what they had to say, and it's a really basic story, but what I hope that it helps to achieve is it highlights an often opaque process, the city budget and the property tax proposals, but it is something that impacts a large number of people, and hopefully I highlighted that and helped to make it a little bit clearer, because whether you like it or not, if you own a home in the city of Buffalo, that was something that was really going to impact you, that property tax hike proposal.
So stories about taxes are not always the most sensational or
No.
sexiest stories out there.
They are not.
But they are important to people, and you can get people going.
Exactly. Oh, yeah.
Taxes. Well, we are hoping to hear from you at 1-877-456-8870 with a membership pledge, and we're going to be going to another Holly Kirkpatrick story. Tell us.
We
what's going
are.
on.
Well, this is actually another one concerning city funds. So if that's your jam, then I'm your gal. So what we have is the Naval Park at the waterfront, city of Buffalo. You might remember back in April of 2022, I believe, USS the Sullivans, one of the decommissioned vessels down there, took on some water, started to list. It was a really sad, sorry sight in the Buffalo Harbor. Was not cool, if you're going to put it colloquially. And then what happened was the city, as well as some federal folks, said, you know what, we're going to give the Naval Park some money. We're going to try and get these vessels fixed. And I found out that some American Rescue Plan money was put toward that cause from the city of Buffalo. But then we found out just recently that $1 million in funding got pulled without notice. So I think maybe we should hear the story. Hopefully that's enough information. But just in case people need to know, American Rescue Plan money was given to the city from the federal government. And that might help you to understand this story.
In 2025, along with decommissioned submarine USS Croker. $20 million in federal, state and county cash came in to fund the repair project, along with $1 million promised by the city of Buffalo. But last week it was revealed the city's cash drawn. That came as a surprise to Naval Park President and CEO Paul Marzello.
I didn't even hear about it unless you would have brought it to my attention. That's concerning to me.
The city's $1 million commitment to repairing the vessels was slated to come from its American Rescue Plan, or ARP funds, federal dollars designed to help the recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic. Federal rules dictate municipalities must get the cash under contract before the end of 2024, with any left over being returned to sender. The money for the naval park was not obligated in time, so in a last-minute move to keep it in-house, the city reallocated that cash to plug budget gaps instead. Marzello said the city's contribution was the only liquid money for the entire project and was therefore critical to getting the repair process underway.
The dry docks aren't going to give us any preferential treatment. If a lake freighter today makes confirmation with a dry dock that we were planning to use and they have the funds, they're going to move ahead of us and we're going to have to wait possibly another year.
Buffalo's Commissioner of Public Works, Parks and Streets, Nate Martin, confirmed to WBFO that his department failed to meet the deadline to obligate the ARP dollars.
The partner to lead that program of restoration, the specialization needed to restore a ship, to be able to survive the waters and to be able to tow it and get it into a dry dock is beyond kind of a municipality. So we're looking to hire a contractor. That whole process, we just were not able to get a contract signed.
But WBFO has found the city only issued an official call-out for professional engineering and maritime services for the project on December 17th, with a January 17th deadline. That's more than 2 weeks after the ARP cash had to be under contract, raising questions about the city's planning processes. Despite the blunder, Martin was adamant the city would still bankroll some of the naval park's plans.
We are going to have $1 million that the city is going to commit to the ships. That is going to remain consistent. We'll get that from another source.
When pressed to specify that source, Martin was non-committal. He estimates the funds will be available in early 2025. Holly Kirkpatrick, WBFO News.
Another fantastic story on WBFO. I'm Marty Wimmer here with Holly Kirkpatrick, the reporter who told the story. So a little follow-up, Holly. What do you think when you rehear that story later?
Well, I mean, actually, this is an issue that I'm still covering. So the city's use of ARP funds is something that I'm still following. I actually even did a story about it yesterday. There was... It seems to have been cleared up now, but there seems to have been some confusion between the city comptroller's office and acting mayor Chris Scanlon's administration. But it seems that everybody is satisfied that all funds have been encumbered, or at least the council members are satisfied, the Common Council. So it's something that I'm following. As you heard in the story, the city was given $331 million in American Rescue Plan funds. That's the biggest one-time handout the city has ever seen from the federal government. And in a way, let's hope that it is the biggest one we ever see, because if we see something like that again, it means that something as bad as the pandemic has happened once again, because it was given to the city to help the recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic.
So do you feel that there's a resolution to this yet at this point? Does it feel resolved to you as a reporter, or do you still have more work to do?
I feel that it is something that I want to keep an eye on, and it is something that may come up again in our news cycle. But yeah, I'll certainly be keeping an eye on it. And as I said, I even reported on this as recently as yesterday. Again, it's hyper-local. Buffalo was not the only municipality across the United States to receive some funding, but I'm obviously keeping an eye on the city of Buffalo's use of that cash.
You know, and that segues perfectly to the idea of what our listeners, what our members do by supplying those member dollars during these membership drives. They allow you to keep your eye on this and report back again later on.
Yeah,
it's what's the magic of the work that you do as a viewer, as a listener at 1-877-456-8870. You help Holly and the other reporters tell these stories and keep their eyes on these stories as they progress.
Yeah, I go digging through documents so you don't have to. And but it's a great privilege to do so, and I actually really enjoy it in a funny sort of way. So with this story, the Naval Park story that you just heard, that involved going to Common Council meetings. So actually, going to meetings in person to follow this story, to see what was happening, but also looking at the Common Council agenda. So digging through documents to try and follow this cash, a huge sum of money, and also speaking to people as well, because some of those organizations, as you heard, the Naval Park in this case, they got their $1 million worth of American Rescue Plan funding was pulled from them without notice. And so I tracked down some other organizations that experienced the same thing, though with less money, and asked them, what happened. So if you really strip things back and you think about what I am doing in my job, it is finding out. That is it. So I go and try and find things out and bring it back to our audience and report back to hopefully help our audience understand the world around them a little bit better.
You speak about your job with a real passion, and that, I think, adds to the quality of the stories that you tell, because when you're passionate about what you're doing, if it's more than just a job, you really dig in, and I think our listeners up to WBFO, the viewers on YouTube, really benefit from that work. And again, I can't overemphasize the importance of our members who make this possible with membership pledges. So if you are a current member of WBFO, thank you so much. If you're not yet or haven't renewed in a while, come on back at 1-877-456-8870. You can pledge online at WBFO. Holly, we are at a fun place today.
We are.
Yeah, we are at a coffee shop on Main Street, 899 Main Street. It's a new place called Unapologetic Coffee. They were up the street on Main Street, a few blocks near Utica, and have recently moved down here. And come on in, have a cup of coffee with Holly Kirkpatrick.
Yeah, it's great to be here. I was saying earlier, usually us radio reporters, of course, we're out and about on the streets in those common council meetings, as I mentioned, but most of the time when I'm making things, when I'm tracking, as we call it, so recording my voice for the stories, I'm in a tiny, dark little booth on my own.
Nobody's putting makeup on your face or anything like that.
No, and you know what? There's in the booth where I record, there's one tiny little window, and if someone even dares peer in, I'm like, get out of here.
I'm recording.
Yeah, leave me alone. So this is really exciting to be here with cameras. There's light rigs. There's people around talking. There's people giving us time and cues. It's really fun to actually be out with other people for once.
This is sort of off the track a little bit, but you're a professional reporter. I've always wondered, when people in high places see you coming, do they walk toward you, or do they turn and go the other way when they see you coming?
I don't think I've quite reached the echelons of having people run away from me just yet. So no, in my experience, actually, that's always the thing that it doesn't surprise me, but I really enjoy about my job is actually people are really generous with their time.
Oh, nice.
And so speaking to me, by extension, they're speaking to you, our audience. That's how I always see it. As I said, my job is to find things out on behalf of our audience, find things out that are in the public interest, that attempts to hold power to account. But most of the time you would be surprised. Yeah, people tend to want to talk to me. And I would think of it this way, maybe if the next time a politician or someone in a position of power does not return comment to a reporter, that's what I always think, well, they're not really returning comment to the public. Okay, that's my personal opinion on that one. But it's my job to try to build those relationships to encourage people to speak to the public through public comment.
And through you can deliver this message, these thoughts, to our listening public on WBFO.
Yeah, it's about getting more information. It's about getting our audience the information that they need to understand the world around them, or to understand an ordinarily opaque issue like property tax, as you heard earlier, or American Rescue Plan funding, stuff that sounds, at first you think, really? But actually, it's important that you understand, or at least have a basic understanding of some of these things, and it's my job to help make those things as clear as possible.
It's so fascinating to me to talk to you about your job. I had mentioned this earlier, but if you just tuned in, reporters are so good at telling other people's stories, not so good at telling their own stories.
No.
And in Holly's case, isn't even particularly fond of telling your own story.
I'm fine with it.
Yeah, I can tell by the way you're gritting your teeth. But it really is fascinating, and I'm sure that our folks would love to know a little bit, whatever you care to share with us about you. Who is Holly Kirkpatrick?
Well, I've told you so many times, Marty, this accent's from Cheektowaga. I don't know what you're talking about. Yeah, so I'm originally from the UK, obviously, but I've been in Buffalo. I've worked out it's going to be about my 9th year here. So here I am in the community in Buffalo.
All right. Well, we're going to be going, and 1-877-456-8870, and thank you, Holly. I'm Marty Wimmer here with Holly Kirkpatrick at Unapologetic Coffee at 899 Main Street in Buffalo, just south of Allen. Really having a great time today. Holly Kirkpatrick has been talking with me this morning about some of her favorite stories from the last year or so that she talked about on WBFO. And while you make your pledge at 1-877-456-8870, I wanted to ask Holly if you could just give us a wrap-up of your favorite stories and which one was your all-time favorite of the year.
Hello, everybody. Oh, gosh, Marty, I don't know if I can pick a favorite one. So, yeah, we have been live on YouTube. Can you believe it or not, so current. We've been live on YouTube and we've been listening to some of the stories. We heard one about a black doll exhibit that was held at the Buffalo and Erie County Public Library last February during Black History Month. And I think I really enjoyed learning about that one. I really enjoyed going to the exhibit, and I really enjoyed telling the story. So if I had to pick, I would pick that one.
I think it was a great story too. I love your story and your storytelling, and you do it so well, and that local focus is really important. On WBFO, of course, we tell stories that happen around the world, around the country, around the state, sometimes in the universe, but we love telling those local stories that impact people right here. For example, we're sitting in a local coffee shop on Main Street in Buffalo right now. And the great thing about all those stories is the way you reporters can break it down to what it matters to folks living here. And, when you tell us about your passion for telling these local stories, what drives you to do what you do?
Well, the public service part of it is a huge driving factor for me. Mm-hmm. It's a massive motivation for me. So, delivering public interest journalism to you, our listener, that's the thing that gets me going. That's the thing that gets me up in the morning. And that's the thing that when I am deep in an investigative story in some spreadsheet that I found in some dark hole of the internet, that is the thing that keeps me going. It's like, actually, I need to understand this so I can make it clear to our audience. And the other thing is, I try to bring those types of stories, but then I try to make sure that people understand why it matters to them, why I'm telling the story, okay? Why I have taken that spreadsheet from the deep, dark hole of the internet and try to bring some light to it and try to help people to understand the world around them. That's what motivates me.
Well, I can tell you as a listener, I appreciate what you do, and I mean that sincerely.
Thank you.
I appreciate what you do, and I respect what you do, and I know our listeners and viewers on YouTube do as well. So thank you for the great work that you do for our community, telling these local stories, sometimes stories that need to be told that aren't told in other places. So it's really important. And that's where our viewers and our listeners come into play, because in order to tell these stories, in order to do this important work, our company relies on our listeners, viewers, to supply those dollars with membership pledges. You are a very important cog in this whole operation here. Anything you can donate right now at 1-877-456-8870 will make a difference. If you'd like to give a one-time gift of a certain amount of money, that's great. If you'd like to be a sustainer and give on a monthly level, that's great as well. But however you want to do it is great, so that Holly can continue telling these great stories.
Yeah, and you were being very kind there, saying you appreciate me. I appreciate you, and I appreciate our listeners, because without donations from people like you listening at home or in the car or doing the dishes, emptying the dishwasher, whatever it is, we wouldn't be able to bring you the programming that you like from NPR. We also wouldn't be able to bring you the local programming from WBFO, from the folks back in the newsroom. We won't be able to bring that over the airwaves either, because listener donations, I'm always fascinated by this, but listener donations make up over half of our budget here. So when we say we wouldn't be able to do this without you, the listener, it is true.
It is true. It really is. If you could make a pledge right now at 1-877-456-8870 or at WBFO.org, that would be great. If you're in your car right now, maybe somewhere around downtown Buffalo, stop in at Unapologetic Coffee. We're here right now live on camera on YouTube and, of course, on the radio. And stop in, have coffee, meet the folks from Buffalo Toronto Public Media. There are a number of us here making this work today, and including reporter Holly Kirkpatrick.
Yeah, hello. And I have said this more than once already today, but it's really exciting to be out here. Obviously, I'm out and about quite a lot in the community for reporting. I'm at Common Council meetings. As you heard, if you've been listening on YouTube, we heard some stories. One of them was at the Naval Park. I'm out and about reporting in the city. But this is particularly exciting because I don't normally get to work alongside other people so much. You know, being a reporter, even though I'm out and about, I'm talking to other people. It's mainly me that's out and about. It's mainly me as well, recording in a dark booth somewhere if I'm recording my voice. So to have other people around me today, super exciting.
It's really funny. No one would realize that being a reporter can be a little bit lonely from time to time.
I hope I didn't make it sound too depressing. I really, really, really enjoy my job. And I love going, she says. I think I feel like the eek emoji right now. But no, seriously, I love talking to people. I get to talk to people all the time. But once I'm writing, once I'm behind that computer writing, it's mainly me.
Yeah, well, that's just great. You know, you please understand, if you're watching on YouTube, if you're listening on the radio right now, what we do at WBFO, at Buffalo Toronto Public Media, is all made possible by our member dollars. So do what you can. Make a donation if you can today at 1-877-456-8870. You can pledge at your computer at WBFO.org. And some really cool people have the app on their phone now, and you can even pledge that way. Tap the app, you'll see the donate button right up there at the corner. And that's how I did it last time, by the way, and it was really, really very easy to do. But we're going to be here for a bit longer, so if you're around this area, stop by Unapologetic Coffee, 899 Main Street, say hello. But before we wrap things up, Holly, any final things you wanted to get out that you haven't had a chance to say yet?
Not particularly. I mean, I think we've been live for an hour on YouTube, so I've certainly said a lot there. But I think the message that I want to drive home is that fact that this is public media, and I am very privileged and proud to work for public media, and we wouldn't be able to do this without listener donations. So if you are somebody that usually pledges but you haven't had a chance to yet, this is your sign. Please pick up the phone, 1-877-456-8870 to make your donation, or you can go online, WBFO.org, to do that. Whether you are you're the sort of person that puts down that one-time donation, or maybe you are a sustainer member. If you're already a sustainer member, maybe consider upping that donation a little bit, adding a couple more extra dollars on each month.
It's been great being here today with you, Holly Kirkpatrick, earlier with Ryan Zunner, and the owners of Unapologetic Coffee here at 899 Main Street. Please make your pledge and help us continue doing what we do at WBFO. 1-877-456-8870, WBFO.org. And thank you so much for your contribution. And we're going to talk to our special YouTube viewers right now. Thank you for tuning in. We hope you'll remember our YouTube channel. You come back often. This is a newer thing for us, and we're really thrilled that you've tuned in. Please come on back often. Make a pledge if you can at 1-877-456-8870.
Yeah, thanks for tuning into YouTube. This has been fun. Thanks for being here.
It is really fun to do this, to go on these live remotes, to talk to the reporters, and to talk to you about membership. This YouTube thing is kind of new to us, so we're really, really having fun with it, and we hope that you're having fun with it as well. And I hope that you'll support it at 1-877-456-8870. I'm Marty Wimmer here with Holly Kirkpatrick. Thank you so much, and we'll talk to you again really soon.